Hey guys, today's a fun one. Today we're going out of this world, literally. We're talking about 3 things that we can learn about weight loss from NASA astronauts. That's right. This is a little out there, literally, but I did some research and we're gonna talk about 3 things that NASA astronauts do that we can learn from, that we can apply. And so as I go through these 3 points, I'm gonna separate it into 3 different sections. The first section is gonna be what the astronauts do. Okay. The second thing is going to be why it works. And then the third thing is going to be for us here on Earth, while they're up in the International Space Station, for us here on Earth, what it is that we can do realistically to make sure that we can have the maximum impact from these strategies that NASA astronauts use to either maintain, lose, or gain weight and so forth. If you don't know who I am, my name is Eddie. I lost over 125 pounds and I've kept that weight off for almost 23 years now. And what I do now is I work with select entrepreneurs, executive, busy professionals, business professionals both, and busy moms and dads. And I work with them on implementing a system that helps them drop 20 to 25 pounds in 90 days, a system that is simplified, that makes fat loss and weight loss feel easy because you know exactly what you're doing and you know exactly how to do it. With that said, let's get into the 3 things that we can learn from NASA astronauts about weight loss. The first thing that we can learn from them is pre-measured meals and precision without overthinking. So we're going to separate this into 3 sections. The first thing is, what is it that astronauts do when it comes to like pre-meal? So obviously you're in the International Space Station. Picture yourself in the International Space Station. You have pre-cooked meals and pre-planned out meals. And so you're not out there going to like Starbucks or going to Arby's or wherever else you go to. Hopefully you're not going to Arby's. But the idea is you have these pre-planned meals. And so on the International Space Station, astronauts consume carefully pre-measured meals designed by NASA's Space Food Systems Laboratory. Now, obviously we don't have a Space Food Systems Laboratory that can prepare meals for us. That's okay, right? Let's talk first about why this works and why it helps them. So these meals, they're calorie controlled. So we know how many calories are in them. They're nutrient dense. So they're specifically tailored to have a certain amount of nutrition in them, right? And then they're tailored to the individual's needs. So different astronauts may have a different plan, right? Based on whatever it is that their nutritional needs are. If they're heavier, if they're lighter, if they're male, female, and so forth. So what this does is it ensures that they don't gain any weight, that they're not losing any weight, that they're just kind of maintaining their weight. Everything is pre-planned, pre-measured. Everything is prepared specifically to their tailored needs. So why is it that this works? Well, the simplicity of pre-planning your meals, this is whether you're in space or on Earth, the simplicity of pre-planning your meals is going to avoid any kind of like decision fatigue. It's going to avoid, the common barrier for people that I work with, which are busy professionals, which is like, oh, we're going to lunch and now I have no idea what's on the menu and someone's going to order a bunch of appetizers and it's going to be a bunch of fried stuff, right? So it's going to avoid all of that stuff if you know exactly what you're going to be eating, when you're going to be eating it every single day. Now, as we think about the third part of this, which is applying this on Earth, applying this, in our own daily lives, it's not realistic that you're going to have everything pre-planned. It's not realistic unless you have a meal planning service. And if you are fortunate enough to have the funds to do a meal planning service, I think that's one of the easiest ways to go about it. I do have clients, entrepreneurs, executives that do order like a meal planning service, and then the meals are basically shipped to them every single week, and they know exactly what they're eating. They know how much protein, carbs, and fats is in each meal. They know how many calories is in each meal, and it's the easiest way for them to know exactly how much they're eating so that they can lose weight. And I've found that this is a really effective way for people to lose weight. I understand that not everyone can afford that, but if you can afford it, I think it's a very, very strategic way for you to control all of your food intake. The other thing that this does is that it reduces, your reliance on willpower. It reduces your reliance on going to the grocery store when you're hungry and making sure that you pick healthier foods versus stuff that you're hungry for while you're at the store or while you're at the grocery store. So it's gonna allow you, when you're prepping your meals or when the person is prepping your meals, to pick ahead of time and prioritize and strategize. You want lean proteins. You want a certain amount of protein. You want to hit a certain amount of carbs or fats. You want to hit a certain amount of calories, more importantly, right? What's your caloric budget for the day? So whether you do it yourself on a Sunday and you just, cook a bunch of stuff, or whether you have a meal planning service that delivers meals to you, it's a really, really effective way to make sure that you know exactly how much you're eating. And then after that, all you have to do is make sure that you move enough so that you can lose a little weight, so that you're in a calorie deficit. So that's one of the real most effective ways for people to maintain a deficit, because you know what your numbers are. You know how much calories you're eating. You know how much protein you're having. You're going to stay full because you're going to be able to decide ahead of time that you're eating nutrient-dense foods that are going to keep you full and keep you satisfied. They're going to have the right amounts of protein, that are going to have the right amounts of fats and fiber, things like that are going to keep you full. The second thing that we can learn from NASA astronauts about weight loss or weight management and how they handle their weight when they're in space is they have structured eating times and windows. And so they're eating, not only are they eating the same things from point number one, but then they're eating around the same times. Doesn't have to be exactly the same time. For them, it probably is. For us, it doesn't have to be. But they're eating around the same times. And a couple of the reasons why they do this, first of all, I did a little research. In space, you have microgravity, so you don't have as much gravity as you have here on Earth. And so body fluids can shift. And when body fluids shift around because there's not enough gravity, you have, things like congestion-like effects. You have, for some reason, they say that their taste and smell is a little more dull, so they may not be as hungry. And so they actually have the opposite problem, where they actually have to schedule out their meals and eat, because sometimes they won't feel as hungry because the lack of gravity affects their appetite. Their appetite signals aren't as normal as they are when you're down here on Earth, like you and I. So they basically have a lot of smaller meals and they eat more frequently. Doesn't mean you have to, because it doesn't matter how many times you eat during the day, but they have a structure in place. So not only do they know exactly what they're eating, but they know when they're eating. And so I, for example, one of the easiest ways that I kind of maintain my weight is I know that I have, my coffee in the morning. I know that I have a mid-morning, protein shake that's going to keep me full till lunch. And then I know I have my lunch, and then I know I have a snack between lunch and dinner, and then I have my dinner. And then sometimes I'll even have like a yogurt or something after dinner if I feel like I want it. Greek yogurt, blueberries, something very simple, very light, high in protein, things like that. So I have that structure in place, and I do that almost every single day. The only exceptions are when I go out to dinner with my wife, or when we have a birthday party, or we have these other events. But if you think about it, all you have to do is make sure that you're hitting your goals and that you're kind of staying with your plan 80% of the time. The other 20% of the time, that's okay. That's 20% for life to happen. Right? So you're going to have birthday parties, you're going to have events, you're going to have a happy hour, you're going to be entertaining clients, things like that. So that's okay. Don't let those things get in the way of you being or making progress. It's just another way for you to manage it is by making sure that 80% is under control. So you know what you're eating, and then again, you know when you're eating. So you have a little more structure around your meals. And so the way that they do this is obviously by eating every few hours. A lot of times they'll add some spicy foods because they're not really hungry, and it just kind of helps stimulate their appetite a little bit because it's a little bit of a bolder flavor for them. So those are the ways that they do it. Now, why this works. Structured eating, ensures consistency. First of all, you start to get this habit of your brain thinking, okay, I know it's 12 o'clock, so I know I'm going to have lunch. I know that it's 2:30, so I know I'm going to have my snack. I'm speaking for myself. I know that it's 6 o'clock, so I know I'm going to have dinner. And then I have enough time between 6 o'clock and bedtime to have a little bit of a snack in there in the middle if I want to. And it's still not going to disrupt my sleep. I have that structure. And so as you eat regularly like that, you're not going to have your hunger signals go up and down so dramatically because you're kind of keeping it at bay. You're right. You're feeding yourself nutritious foods. You're eating the similar types of foods, and then you're not exposing yourself to the potential to overeat usually because you're kind of feeding yourself on this regular schedule. So you're not giving yourself an opportunity to overeat. This specifically works if you have busy schedules. Make sure that you have snacks on hand. Make sure that you have nutritious food on hand so that you can eat those things and not go 5, 6, 7 hours without eating. And then all of a sudden you're ravenously hungry and you make a bad decision for dinner because you haven't eaten in the last 6 or 7 hours. That's what you want to avoid. So by having not only the foods that you know you're going to eat, but by eating them at regular time periods and making sure that you make room for those meals, You're going to make sure that your hunger signals don't go up and down so volatile. And that's going to really protect you from overeating. Let's get into the third thing and the last thing that I'm going to talk about that we can learn from NASA astronauts about weight loss or weight management. And that is strength training and exercise. So what do astronauts do? Astronauts exercise, it says here about 2 hours a day, which is a lot. You don't need to exercise that much, so that's good news for you. But they do that because they're in this microgravity environment on the International Space Station. They have to combat muscle loss and they have to combat bone loss also. So you can have some bone loss, some bone density loss, and you can have some muscle mass. And it's a little more accelerated up there in the space station than it is here on Earth. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's great. We're not in a microgravity environment. So why is it that I should worry about bone loss or muscle loss? Well, I'm glad you asked. I pulled up some studies that will prove to you that as you get older, adults, after about 35 or 40, depending on the person, we start to lose muscle mass and we start to lose power, we start to lose strength and even bone density. Specifically, if you're a woman, you're going to lose bone density because you're more likely to have bone density issues as you get older unless you strength train and you build enough muscle. So why this works? Exercise is mandatory for these astronauts. They're doing it whether they like it or not, whether they're in the mood or not, whether they're motivated or not. It's just they're consistent with it because they know that they have to do it, because if they don't do it, then they're going to lose muscle and they're going to lose bone density. They're going to lose power and strength. So again, you're in the same situation here, guys. We're all in the same situation. I'm right now 42. I'm going to be 43 at the end of this year. I'm losing muscle every year unless I make sure that I strength train enough to not only build muscle, but the more muscle I have, the muscle attaches to the bone. So the stronger my bone density and my bone structure is because it has to hold on to that muscle and that musculature. So the musculoskeleton system works together. You have stronger muscles, you're going to have stronger bones. So every single year we're losing muscle, we're losing power, we're losing strength. I pulled up a study here back in 2019, resistance training for older adults. Basically what they found is after age 30, adults lost approximately 3 to 8% of their muscle mass every 10 years, every decade. So basically, and then after 60, it gets even faster. So after 60, it's a process known as sarcopenia, basically the loss of muscle. So after 30, you're already losing about 3 to 8% of your muscle mass every 10 years. And then after 60, it speeds up even more. Now, natural question is, okay, well, does that mean that if you're 50 or 60 that you don't have to worry about it? You already lost your muscle and you don't have to worry? No. Studies also show that you can do strength training and you can build muscle well into your 70s and 80s even. So keep lifting weights, keep doing strength training. You're going to wake up on days when you don't want to do it. That's okay. That doesn't mean that you don't do it. You do it anyway. You build consistency. You're not always going to be motivated. You have to rely on discipline, not motivation. And so you have to strength train to make sure that you fight the loss in power, in muscle, in strength, okay? And the loss in bone density. Even though you're not in space and losing it a little quicker, you're still losing it down here if you don't strength train. So that's something else that we can learn from them is they do it because they have no choice, because it's almost like this known fact that when you're in microgravity and you have less gravity, you're going to lose a little more muscle mass, you're going to lose a little more bone density. Well, guess what, guys? We're losing it here too on Earth. So you better learn from them and apply it to your own situation here. If you're losing 3 to 8% muscle mass every 10 years, then the only way to fight that is to lift weights, to get more muscle and to get stronger bones. There was another study that I pulled up from back in 2017 that talked about the effects of strength training on muscle mass and strength in middle-aged and older adults. So if you're over 40 or so, and what they did was in adults aged 40 to 70, they did high-intensity strength training sessions only 3 days per week, okay? For 12 weeks, for 90 days. 3 days of working out per week of strength training. Increased muscle mass by 1 to 2 kilograms. And then they increased their strength by 15 to 30%. That's a huge increase. If you can increase your strength by 15 to 30% and you can build some muscle that way, then you're counteracting the age-related muscle decline. And by counteracting the muscle decline and being stronger, you're helping your bones stay stronger as well. So the study showed that even short-term strength training, doesn't have to be 2 hours in the gym. It can be 30 minutes of strength training. As long as you're doing it at the right intensity, you're going to improve your muscle, you're going to improve your power, you're going to improve your strength, and you're going to improve your bone density. So guys, what are we waiting for? go strength training, go lift something heavy, and make sure that you make it a part of your routine every single week, at least 2 to 3 times. If you can do it once a week, that's fine. If you can do it 2 to 3 times, that's ideal. Just because you're not on the space station doesn't mean you're not losing muscle and bone density every year. If you're over 35 or 40, you're losing muscle, you're losing power, you're losing strength every year, you're losing bone density every year, unless you counteract it by lifting heavy weights. Again, guys, as I mentioned before, I work with entrepreneurs, executives, busy moms and dads, busy professionals that are fed up. They want to lose 20 to 30 pounds or more, and they need a proven system that's going to help them get there as quickly as possible by simplifying the whole process, by making weight loss and making fat loss easy, making it simple. If you're interested, click the link below. We'll schedule a hassle-free call. It's not a high-pressure sales call, just to see if you're a good fit for the program. I'm here to help you guys. I'm rooting for you guys. Please leave in the comments if you're gonna be incorporating any strength training, if you're not already doing strength training. If you are, tell me how many days a week you're doing strength training. Are you doing, a split where you're doing 4 or 5 days a week, or are you doing more full body workouts where you're doing 2 to 3 days a week? Both are great. It depends on your schedule. It depends on how much you enjoy strength training. And then what are you doing with your meals? Are you going to consider a meal delivery service? Are you already doing a meal delivery service? Has it worked out for you? I think it's a really effective way for you to know exactly how many calories you're having so that you can really hit your weight loss goals. If you can afford it, do that. If not, do some meal prepping on the weekends and make sure that you prep your meals for the week or at least a few days ahead of time. Even if you have to prep them in the morning and you know what you're having for lunch and for dinner, that's still a win. One last thing, if you want to get my free 28-page nutrition guide, there's also a link in the description for that. All you got to do is go to mindset.eddieroselle.com and I will send you the 28-page nutrition guide absolutely free. And as a bonus, you'll also be on my newsletter where I send out every Saturday morning a letter talking about lifestyle, talking about mindset, talking about weight loss, different tips, tricks, things that I've learned from my experience of losing weight over 20 years ago and keeping it off for that amount of time. So thanks so much. I'll see you guys on the next video. Cheers.